Thanks for that feeble welcome, everybody. That was really feeble. Just kidding. You know I love you. Thanks so much for coming down to Surf at the Bar tonight. I'm actually personally very excited tonight because it's not often that you get more than one South African in the house. How many South Africans are in the house, brew? All right, the other reason why I'm really excited, see this old vintage picture up here? This is actually me in the Transkei somewhere, en route to a surf trip in the family combi. This is Eddie Aikau, and this is my mum at a barbecue. And I was actually born in South Africa, and even though I was only there for the first couple of years of my life before we came and actually moved in with the Aikau family in Hawaii, somehow my whole life I've still felt a big part of South Africa in me. I don't know where that comes from, but it never leaves you. And I think for anybody that's ever been there, and I hope if you haven't yet you will, because it's kind of the last frontier, it's really cool. Anybody that's been there, and that includes Eddie Aikau, it's an amazing place that has lifelong influence for you. And Eddie was there in the early 70s at a time when, I guess, you know, apartheid was still kind of there, and he wasn't sure, being a dark Hawaiian, if he was black or white or which colour was he and which room should he go in. And so that was how we actually found him. He was a little bit confused about where he should go, so we picked him up and took him to our house and said, wherever we go, you go, brew. And he joined the trip, and it was a really good trip. And when he came back to Hawaii, in the mid-70s, when the South Africans and the Australians started coming and surfing and pro surfing was kind of taking off, excuse me, there were some tensions on the North Shore. And I think that he called a meeting here in the Turtle Bay, actually, in the 70s, and it was a peacekeeping meeting. And I think he called that meeting because he knew what it was like to be a foreigner in a foreign land and feel alone and need a little bit of moral support and need to find your own tribe. And so he peacekeeped between Hawaiians and South Africans and Australians and kind of set surfing off on a new course. So it was his appreciation of South Africa and what he learned over there and the people that he met there that I think taught him lessons that he walked through life with as well. So with that little story of coolness about Eddie Aikau, I'd like to introduce tonight's guest, Andrew Lange and Twiggy. Grant Twiggy Baker, come on up.
Hello.
Hello, everyone. How's it?
So should we ask them to speak slowly so we can all understand?
Kan jy my verstaan as ek Afrikaans praat?
Kan niemand die taal praat hierso?
Well, welcome back, Twiggy. You've just gotten back from Australia, won some prize over there for big wave riding. Andrew, you are kind of doing what you do, sort of free surfing for a living?
Laying low on the North Shore.
So I wanted to ask, let's start with Twiggy. You've been travelling for a number of years now as a big wave rider and a professional surfer. How difficult is it for a South African to get out of your country and travel freely around the world? Is it still difficult?
It can be difficult. I think a lot of us don't actually want to leave South Africa because it's such a great place. I always say my favorite country in the world is South Africa. My second favorite is Mexico. But it is difficult because obviously our currency is not that strong. And at the moment it's really nosedived. We've gone from like 5 Rand to the dollar to 10 Rand to the dollar in the last couple of months. So it's been a real struggle for us. But you know what? If you do it like Rooster does it, and we've got other friends, Josh Redman and Frank Solomon, you know, you got to make it happen. You work on the road and you surf, and you kind of got to live away from home rather than just be a professional surfer away from home. You've got to, you know, find places to stay. I stay with Jim Booth out here on the North Shore. He puts me up, he gives me a car, and without him I wouldn't be able to do it. And I know Rooster's got a similar story from the land, from Cole Christensen. So, you know, we rely on friends and we rough it, and it's probably more fun that way.
Mm-hmm. Well, the two of you are in the movie that we get to see at the end of this little talk tonight. So what it is kind of South Africa through the eyes of surfers. And I started thinking about it when I watched the movie, that we see a lot of surf movies where they go through, 50 countries in the world looking for waves. But for South Africans who are not perhaps as privileged and sponsored as the two of you, is it really just about exploring your own homeland?
I think the potential of South Africa's coastline has hardly even been tapped, so we're just fortunate there's guys like Twiggy who's been able to facilitate people like me as well, where we can go and find new waves as well, and we're basically living the dream, and all these other guys are living vicariously through us, and it's cool. It's limited, There's a really small surfing population in South Africa if you compare it to California and Australia. So yeah, we're a minority, and we kind of embrace that as well, That's why there's hardly any of us that ever make it out of South Africa. We're so spoilt.
And it's not just South Africa that's got the waves. I mean, we have access to the whole of Africa. And like you said, that's pretty much the last frontier. And myself and Rooster have been very busy the last few years kind of mapping it out and seeing what's going on. And I think you'll be seeing quite a few new discoveries in the next few years coming from us.
Is surfing a viable future for youngsters out of South Africa, or is it just too hard to take that leap?
It's, if I'm honest, it's not really viable. The QS is too expensive for South Africans at the moment. And unless you're prepared to work and surf to make it happen, it's very difficult. But I mean, you look at Geordie Smith, Geordie Smith makes a hell of a lot more money than our captain of our rugby team these days. So from our teachers always telling us that, surfing's not going to get us anywhere, and you look at someone like Geordie Smith and you just go, they were wrong.
Yeah. What about the big wave things? I mean, that's so popular, and the world just seems to have opened up to so many big waves now. Is South Africa, are there big waves there that we're yet to see? Do you do a lot of private kind of exploration, some secret spots?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like we said, it's opening up just recently. I had Mark Healy over last winter. He came over with Ian Walsh, and myself and Rooster have been mapping up that west coast, just looking for big wave spots, and we've got quite a few under our belt. Mm-hmm. And now it's just a matter of getting them on the right conditions. Unfortunately, we were a little bit late that day that Mark came, but we still saw 25-foot waves, and the next time, there's going to be a lot more big surf coming out of South Africa.
What did Mark Healy say? He said there's got to be 3 or 4 of the best big wave spots in the world somewhere on that stretch.
Yeah, the guys are blown away. When we take them up that west coast, I mean, there's no one up there. Not just no surfers, there's no people up there, It's just kind of desolate desert. Take your own water, your own food, you go camping, and it's an amazing place, and it's kind of, I was thinking about it today, it's kind of like us being living in Australia in the 70s and just discovering Indonesia. That's how we're feeling right now about Africa.
Mm-hmm. And I haven't been there for probably over 10 years now, so how has things changed there? It always feels like it's on the verge of really happening, South Africa. So do you feel like you're going to really join that global community, and is that a good thing even?
I'm not sure. I think, again, surfers in South Africa are very isolated just because of the numbers again, and hopefully in tourism perspective, one day South Africa will have its place, like we discussed the other day, maybe after New Zealand, the world will take note of Cape Town and South Africa and all its beauty, but at the moment it's not easy. It's definitely difficult place to live at the moment, and everyone's faced with challenges in life, but South Africa just seems to challenge you a little bit more, and the guys do well, a lot is expected of us, even though we don't have much.
Yeah.
From a surfing point of view, I always say the sharks are our friends. Otherwise, it would be a lot more crowded.
I wanted to ask about that, because as well as this movie, The Africa Project, you've been involved with a movie about sharks. So is it really that bad?
Yeah, let's just say yes. Nah, look, I mean, the ocean is alive. Anywhere where the ocean is bountiful, there's the food chain, and generally, the sharks have got their own agendas. They're chasing different things to us. That's what we tell ourselves, at least.
Rooster and I have been surfing some very sharky places our whole lives, and we're still here, so it can't be that bad.
Touch wood.
Well, everybody loves a good shark story. Have you got a good one, Rooster?
Oh, when we were making that movie, it's called Surfing and Sharks in South Africa. There was this Dutch crew that they were the filmers, you know, and they really wanted this powerful footage of us paddling through sharks, you know, like surfer on the surface with underneath looking up, and we ended up on a reef off the south coast of Natal called LOL Shoal, notorious for sharks, and the guys had this big 50-kilogram ball of sardines, and they chucked it overboard. They were like, okay, just wait, and we're like, what? And like 150 sharks just appeared out of nowhere, but they weren't the lethal sort. You know, they were white-tip reef sharks and all females. So this was the rationale, that basically they were there for the sardines, for the little sardines we were chucking in the water. They weren't going to eat us, and this is what we were told as well. And it kind of worked. Eventually, an African friend of mine and I, whose brother had been eaten by a shark 6 months before, killed, he jumped in the water with me as well, and we had this real moment where we just kept an eye over each other's backs, and you know, the sharks swam all around us, and yeah, it was really stupid. I just thought to myself, Rooster, here you doing it again. None of your friends would do this. What are you thinking? Yeah, it was very stupid. And I wore booties just to give myself a false sense of security, but they had this little grey patch right on the toe that looked just like a sardine, and that's all I could think about. Just dangling my toes. Very bad. Bad idea.
Well, Twiggy, what's worse, dungeons or the thought of sharks? Because dungeons looks like a mean wave to me.
I think dungeons and the thought of sharks go hand in hand. But luckily, if it gets big enough, then you're not thinking of the sharks at all. But Cape Town, I mean, there's great whites, but I think West Australia has taken over the mantle of most shark attacks recently, and we'll gladly give them that, you know, accolade.
And reunion.
Yeah, there's worse places in the world right now than South Africa.
How connected are you to, you know, in Hawaii here, kind of every surfing story eventually gets back to Duke Kahanamoku. How connected are South African surfers today with sort of their forefathers, you know, Sean Thompsons and the people who sort of late 50s, 60s were the very first surfers in South Africa?
Well, I mean, you know, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. You know, I really look up to the big wave pioneers, especially guys that have been to Hawaii and spent time over here. Guys like Johnny Parman, Gavin Rudolph, Mickey Duffus, and more recently Andrew Marr. I mean, you cannot go surfing on the North Shore and have a South African accent without several people asking you about Andrew Marr and where is he, and he was the nicest guy. And, you know, those guys kind of paved the way for South Africans in Hawaii. And I think, you know, they brought an attitude of, you know, just lie low, don't steal any waves, and when you get your chance at a wave, you better go and you better charge it. And, you know, we try to do it with a smile on our face, and I think because of those guys from the past, it's really, you know, paved the way for myself and Andrew, you know, and there's definitely an acceptance on the North Shore to South Africans. And, you know, we'll forever be grateful to the guys before us, and we'll try to, you know, keep that momentum going so the next generation has the same welcome.
Well, around the world, you know, Australia, America's doing it. A lot of different countries, Brazil, have youth programs in surfing where they have, you know, levels of competition and training and preparation for kids to grow up through the ranks in surfing. Is it possible to do that yet in South Africa, or are the numbers just too few?
I think it's already happening, you know. In my hometown, we have the oldest South African surfing heritage in terms of proper people of color. And the guys are third generation. Some of them are busting airs. They're doing great. And we've got the Lotto behind us, which is it's the government-funded organization. So the development scene in surfing in South Africa is growing strong. You know, I'd have to say better than I would have ever expected a few years ago. And we really have some really strong talents coming up. You know, from very very poor backgrounds. You know, they're killing it.
Look, I mean, obviously, you know, we watched the Eddie Akar movie the other day with you, and that was probably the first time in my life that I've been embarrassed to be in a South African, when I saw the story of Eddie and how he wasn't allowed access to a hotel and a beach in Durban. But, you know, a lot's changed in South Africa since then. You know, both myself and Rooster were involved in the change over from the white government to a democracy. And, I staged sit-ins at my school to protest military service around that time. I went to marches. I was actually studying politics at varsity during the changeover. And, when I thought about it afterwards, we've got so much more to be proud of.
Yeah.
Since then. It's been 20 years since that, and so many people are working so hard to change the country and to turn it around for the better. So I was embarrassed, but then when I thought about it and how far we've come since then, I'm very proud.
Yeah. My mum actually tells me that Eddie loved South Africa. And I think a lot of, sometimes you get different looks and you get people with, new experience. And sometimes it's just a look of curiosity that people can take the wrong way. And we know how that goes on the North Shore here too. And I saw something similar. My little nephew is Australian Aboriginal. And I used to live on the west side of Kauai. So huge Hawaiian population there, a lot from Niihau. And my nephew is dark, but he has curly hair and broad nose. He looks really different. And he was trying to work out why everyone in this little town, when he went outside, would just look at him. And we had to explain to him that they're not being rude to him, they're really curious. Here's someone they've never seen a look and a color quite like that. And I think a lot of what happened in South Africa was similar because we have these other photos through the Transkei where Eddie had a guitar and outside a South African hut with like 50 kids playing music. And I think they were really, it was kind of cool to see the blending of cultures. And you got to figure back, late 60s, early 70s, that was all so new. So he really enjoyed his time in South Africa. It was just a matter of getting in the right groove, I think. So it is an amazing country. It's not to backstab it for sure. What about onto the movie? Were there places that you went, because you go all around the coast of Africa, unbelievable waves. Were there places that were new for you too?
A lot of the places were new for us. I mean, Rooster and I got this bee in our bonnets about 2 years ago, to just go out and find new waves. We suddenly realized, I don't know, we met on the... we met on the...
Don't say it.
We met on the set of Blue Crush 2.
I was Tripper, he was Hemp.
Sorry, that's not the movie we're showing tonight.
So we had a lot of downtime, and for some reason we got this bee in our bonnet that we were just going to go out and find new waves, and we teamed up. I had a 4x4 and a jet ski. Rooster could cook. I was a hopeless cook. And we just set out into the African wilderness, and basically a lot of the stuff that you see on this movie is from those trips. And we've just realized, oh my word, look at this coast that we've got, that we haven't been doing anything. We're the sponsored guys. We're the only guys that got the opportunity to get out there and find these waves, and that's what we're doing. And it's just been an amazing 2 years for us.
Yeah, a lot of discoveries, but also a lot of a lot of downtime. Stuck on the west coast with Twiggy. Oh, joy. Nicknamed him the General after a little while. The hardest thing about surfing on the west coast is getting people to get in the water. Meanwhile, it's like 12 foot and stormy, and mist is coming in, and Healy's frothing. And
Healy wasn't really frothing. I'd a sore neck or something when Healy was there. So I was like, yo, you guys are going to go surf out there. No, I can't surf, but you guys are going to get out there.
Great excuse.
What about Africans who surf? Because when I was there, I only ever saw one dark African who actually surfed. And a lot of sort of Africans on the shoreline collecting salt water in bottles and looking very, trepid against the water. What's the situation, the relationship between Africans and the ocean?
The Africans are scared of the ocean, firstly. That's where the white man came from. They call us the mlungu, which is the white of the foam of the wave. But basically there's just an inbred fear of the ocean that goes back thousands of years. But in Twigstown, Durban, there are Zulu guys who are training up and helping mentor street kids who are, completely estranged on the streets, and they've got a shelter at night, and that's all they've got, basically, a place to sleep. And there's a guy called Tom. He started a thing called Mtombo, where it is this shelter for street kids who get a place to sleep at night as long as they go surf all day. And they've got mentors, elder guys that are Zulus that are just taking them out there. And the main thing is just to keep them in the water, you know. And who's Biggie Small? Remember Biggie Small? This little Zulu guy. His name's Biggie Small, and he's got so much talent. He shouts at like the older white guys in the water, and calls them off waves. Legend.
It's always been very strong in Cape Town with the coloured community, the mixed race community. Plenty of good surfers have come out of Cape Town. Michael February is the latest of a long line of very good coloured surfers. But there's all over, you know, the Jeffreys Bay Board Riders Club has always had a very strong, African surf vibe there. And Umzumbi down the south coast. So there are initiatives going on all over the country. It's called development, and it's through all sport, you know, where you have to have a certain quota in your provincial teams and in your national teams, and this is to encourage obviously the development, because you know, for me, any child that's given an opportunity, you know, it doesn't matter what background they come from. If they have the talent and they're given an opportunity, they're going to excel. It's just a matter of giving that child an opportunity, and we're definitely seeing a lot more of that in South Africa.
Well, for those of you who are fortunate enough to travel a lot during the year and then return to South Africa, you're about to have your first child. When you return and you kind of have fresh eyes from seeing the rest of the world, what do you see when you go home that, one, you love the most, and two, you think you can help affect change with?
Yeah. Well, I obviously love the most about South Africa is my family and friends. You know, my whole network of people that I grew up with are still all living north of Durban, and so that's amazing to get back to and hang out with them. And then my story is pretty interesting. 5 years ago, my stepfather and my mother came to me and said, "Look, there's 4 kids in the family," and they said, "Look, we want to start this orphanage in Inanda, which is just north of Durban. And you guys can either have your inheritance now, or you can back us, and we're going to put all our money into this orphanage." And obviously the kids backed them. And 5 years later, we've got a school, a church, a clinic, and 1,000 kids on this farm just north of Durban. And it's been an amazing journey for us. And I'm just super proud of my parents, and I look forward to going there and working with the kids on the orphanage. It's amazing.
Good luck beating that, Andrew. That's quite a story.
I was just gonna say, when I fly home, and then when you go through security, there's always a big mama there, and she's like, "Hey, where you been?" I say, "Hey, I've been traveling." She's like, "Hey, welcome home," you know. And it's just so beautiful, the accent, and it just does it for me, you know. If it's a big mama or a big fat dude or a little colored guy, they've all got something, you know, and we share that, you know. We understand each other, you know. Like I'm a whitey and they're colored, and we love each other, you know. We agree with each other, and you know, we can call each other what we are, and they can say it like it is, you know. And that's where our cultures come at the moment, you know. Whereas 10 or 20 years ago, or even 5 years ago, I'd go through security or immigration, and they'd be like, "Check this privileged white kid coming through here." But now it's like, "Hey, how's it? Welcome home. Hey."
That's cool.
Yeah, it's the Ubuntu spirit.
Well, for those of us who will go and visit South Africa, how do we, I think when you get there and you find that your money turns into 10 times the amount it was when you left home, and you really are going to be able to get 10 times as much more for your money, it pretty much blows your mind. I once took about a dozen people out for dinner at an incredible steakhouse, and I think we had drinks and wine and full dinner and everything, and I think it cost the equivalent of about $50 or $60 for the whole table. And I found myself in the predicament of being well served by a lot of people who worked in the restaurant, and wondering how appropriate is it to leave a big tip, or, you know, is it insulting, or what's the best way for people who visit South Africa to deal with that ability to leave something financial but not sure what the guidelines are?
South Africans definitely tip. We're not Australians. But a decent tip is, 10%. And if you're happy with the service, you can go more. But you pretty much have to tip every time, whether the service is good or not.
But when it's that cheap, I mean, if you could leave $100, what would be $100? Because you want to, but that's $1,000. Is that a good or a bad thing?
Well, I think for the person working, it's a great thing. Yeah, I mean, you know, if you feel that it's worth it, then tip them for sure. They're not going to find it insulting. Definitely not.
The reason I ask is in Durban, I saw a lot of homeless kids when I was there. And they'll often come up and ask you, got any money or got any food or whatever. And you wonder sometimes, like, how do you not open up the box to make a problem for them? Not that you don't want to help, but you don't want to make it worse for them.
You should never really give to people that are begging. You know, a lot of them will do something, you know, wash windows, collect rubbish, you know, or do something, you know, that you can give them a tip for. But there are a lot of initiatives in South Africa, and if you are a homeless person or a street child, or that, there are a lot of places that you can go to get help. So, you know, we don't really encourage, you know, to give to beggars per se, but, you know, there's people doing all sorts of odd jobs that you can help them with.
All right. Okay, so you're from the south coast, south of Durban. You're from Durban.
I'm from the North Coast.
From the North
He's
Coast.
from Durban.
And is there much difference between the people, you know, as you make your way around, even Cape Town and all around the West Coast? Do you find that you guys sound and feel different?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's like everywhere. There are you know, certain beaches right next to each other. You'll get localism at different beaches. But for me, I've never really been a local at any beach, so I don't really understand that mentality. But Rooster has been a hardcore local down the South Coast for his whole life, so he'll be able to say something about that.
No, I was just trying to get Twig to tell the story about, you know, he told me the other day he had a wave at Pop, you know, the locals, he paddled out at Pop, and the locals all said, hey, have a wave, Twig. And he goes 100 kilometers down the coast to where I live, and he just gets vibed. Stinky letters on the windscreen, chirped in the water, dropped in on. So yeah, no, we're a proud bunch.
Are we going to see the big wave events make a return to South Africa? I mean, Dungeons really broke some ground. Are we going to see big wave events re-emerge?
I hope so. You know what? Sponsorships are hard to come by anywhere in the world right now, specifically for surfing. So I'm not confident that it'll come back, but we're definitely trying to bring it back.
And what's the future for you?
Oh, I guess it's undecided, eh?
Mozambique in 2 weeks.
I got the worst and best influence in the world here next to me. I'm going to be trying to be a responsible adult, and I got Twig phoning me. Come on, Rooster, let's go to Mozambique, Madagascar.
Well, we're going to watch the movie, and there's an incredible left on it that you can literally sit in and get barreled for about 30 seconds. Where is that?
Twig was the one who's sitting in that barrel for 30 seconds, and I'll just just add that it's probably one of the hardest places to sit in the barrel for 30 seconds. So the wave will look real appealing, but good luck to you if you can actually ride it. It's insane.
If you've got an adventurous spirit, and I mean, you want to throw back to the 70s style of really looking for waves, Africa's your place, you know. You don't need a lot of money, you just need a bit of time. Go there and just with a backpack and a surfboard, and you'll be amazed at what you can find.
All right, so who's ready to go? Anybody headed to South Africa? We're going to let the movie roll. It's about an hour and 20 minutes long, so we understand not everybody can concentrate in this room. So please feel free to stay as long or as light as you like. And feel free to come visit with the unofficial South African Visitors Bureau. It's been great to have you. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Refugees.